What's going on, guys? So keeping in line with my video series on the Hokages, I figured since I already did a True Power series on all 7 Hokages and talked about who I felt the best Hokage was and talked about who I thought the worst Hokage was, I thought that it was only right that the next 2 installments in this series be on who I thought the most overrated and the most underrated Hokage was. So for this video, we're going to be talking about the most underrated. At first, I thought that this was going to be something that I was going to struggle with coming up with an answer for, but the more I got to thinking about it, the more obvious the answer became. The most underrated Hokage is none other than Minato Namikaze. Now, I know right away someone's going to challenge that line of thinking and say, how can someone who's one of the most popular characters in the franchise be considered the most underrated Hokage? Well, the reason I feel he's the most underrated is that I think a lot of people still downplay Minato before he returned in the 4th grade Ninja War. So obviously, as I make the case for why he's the most underrated Hokage, I'm only going to be using the Hokage version of the character where it pertains to his accomplishments as Hokage, the lore surrounding the character, and some of his more impressive moments. So starting off, Minato wasn't a man who had Senju DNA like 3 of the Hokages, nor did he gain his name recognition by using the Kekkei Genkai of the Uchiha clan, nor did he have the privilege of being trained by 2 Hokages like Hiruzen and Sarutobi did. And most importantly, the guy didn't have a freaking Biju shoved inside of him. Minato, in my opinion, is the perfect balance of hard work and intelligence and the embodiment of what the Naruto franchise stands for. The guy was a genius, true enough, but he outworked everyone to reach his position, and his training wasn't aided by a Hokage as a teacher or anything that wasn't given to him at birth. The first point I'll make in regards to Hokage Minato is that I won't be doing a full breakdown of Minato's true power and skill because I've already done a really in-depth video on that topic, which I'll leave linked in the end credits for you guys. Just using the night of his death as a gauge, Minato displayed several moments that night why he should be regarded as one of the most impressive Hokages. However, what's ironic is that the fights with Obito and the Kyuubi are the only fights we see Hokage Minato have. Yet people still have a really bad habit of downplaying what he did and in some cases outright disrespecting him. As I go over the information from that night, I want you guys to remember that Minato was only 24 years old doing all of this, and he hadn't yet reached his physical prime. Based on the information that we got in the war arc, we know that from Genma that it takes 3 Jonin level ninja pulling all of their chakra together just to use the basic Flying Thunder God jutsu. Genma specifically states that the jutsu requires a massive chakra reserve in order to perform it. So that in itself lets you know that the basic version is something that is a chakra drain. Minato not only spammed the Flying Thunder God several times during the night that he died, but he also did so very casually. I want to add further emphasis on this because this is not something that cannot be stressed enough. A jutsu that required a massive amount of chakra just to perform the basic version of it was spammed casually by Minato. If that isn't wild enough, Minato also used a more advanced version of the jutsu on the night that he died that required even more chakra. Minato first used the Flying Thunder God Guiding Thunder Jutsu, which might have ate up a considerable amount of chakra, but Minato was able to teleport a whole ass Biju bomb from the Kyuubi that was being fired by a Kyuubi that's at full power. I want you guys to think about all the stuff that we saw Naruto do in the war arc with only half of the Kyuubi's chakra. Like how with half the chakra he was able to overpower the collective Biju bombs being fired off by the Jinchuriki that Obito was controlling. Minato not only had enough power to use a jutsu to teleport the Biju bomb from the full power of the Kyuubi, meaning at a minimum the Biju bomb that he teleported was at a minimum was twice as strong as the ones that we saw Naruto use in the war. He was able to use the Flying Thunder God Stage 2, which allows him to move at speeds that not even a Sharingan can react to. Now, we also know from the Naruto manga that summoning Gamabunta in itself is a feat, since Gamabunta is stated to require a massive amount of chakra just to be able to summon. After spamming Flying Thunder God, using 2 more advanced versions of the jutsu to eat up even more chakra, Minato was able to summon Gamabunta and not even appear drained after doing so. Now, if that isn't crazy enough, he then proceeds to teleport the whole 9 tails, meaning both halves at full power, and himself using the Flying Thunder God. As established earlier, just using Flying Thunder God is impressive, but the fact that he was able to teleport the entire Kyuubi, which in itself has more chakra than all the other 8 Biju, is absolutely absolutely insane. It's in this moment that we finally see Minato starting to show some signs of fatigue, but don't let that fool you. The guy then proceeded to casually split the Kyuubi chakra in half, use the Reaper Death Seal on himself to seal half of the Kyuubi into himself, while mixing chakra into Naruto and mixing Minato and Kushina's chakra into his son. He was also able to use the sealing jutsu to make Naruto a Jinchuriki while having a gaping hole in his chest. Again, despite being chakra drained, Minato was able to use 2 complex sealing jutsu in his dying moments, bringing the total number of sealing jutsu he used on that night up to 3, which is absolutely insane. The fact that this guy used 3 sealing jutsu very casually while doing everything else that he did. In his fight with Obito, Minato, while worrying about his dying wife who just had the Kyuubi extracted from her, worrying about his newborn son, and showing concern for the village that was being destroyed by the Kyuubi, Minato was able to defeat Obito, the very same Obito who was trained by Mamoru Uchiha, and he broke down the mechanics of Obito's Kamui after only seeing it used twice, being able to keep a cool head under immense pressure while also being able to break down the jutsu of the enemy, who at the time he believed to be Mamoru Uchiha, is nothing short of impressive. He ran through all the possible scenarios of how Obito could have attacked the village, controlled the Kyuubi, known the weak point of the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki when she was pregnant, and came up with a countermeasure. In the manga, we saw characters take much longer periods of time in order to break down Obito's abilities. We also saw a few times in the manga, with the best example being everyone's favorite genius Shikamaru, that when everything unravels on the spot without any type of plan in place before that not everyone can come up with a counter plan on the spot. When Asuma died, Shikamaru, if you're being honest, Shikamaru left a lot of moves on the table, had moments where he was beginning to lose his cool, and he wasn't able to come through when it mattered most, which is why his master ultimately died. Minato, on the other hand, kept his head cool, theorized on the identity of his target, came up with an effective countermeasure to win the fight, broke the contract between Obito and the Kyuubi, and managed to force Obito to retreat. Most importantly, before he even summoned Gamabunta and stopped the Kyuubi from firing a Biju bomb that would have hit the 3rd Hokage, Minato already ran through every possible scenario and realized that he needed to make Naruto the Jinchuriki of the Nine-Tails, and that he would need to seal half of the Kyuubi into himself. People overlooked that part of Minato's death because of how quick it was. He'd already figured out his next 2 moves after defeating Obito, meaning he'd already considered the possibility of staying alive to raise his son. He'd already considered his wife's outrage and the fact that the balance of the Biju between the nations would be ruined if he gave into his own emotions and raised Naruto. For the second and final portion of this video, Minato as Hokage should be given a whole hell of a lot more credit for his term that we know lasted only a little over a year. Now, during this time, despite being a very young Kage, Minato was able to keep the village stable, which tends to be downplayed by a lot of fans, and I think the best way to kind of big this up is to go back, read the chapter when Tsunade tells Jiraiya she wants to go with them to the Hidden Rain village, and read why Jiraiya flat out denied her request to do so. So let's look at the landscape of the time. So Konoha was fresh from a war that was started when the village was already running low on ninja and still recovering from the end of the Second Great Ninja War that Hiruzen Sarutobi started. Minato began the process of guiding the villages from being in a wartime era to being in a time of peace. He was also able to use his fame from the war to ensure that no one tested Konoha. And you have to remember that while the Rock Village did surrender, there were still tensions with the Hidden Cloud Village, and that's going to be very important going forward. Minato is credited with being the sole reason why Inoki was agreeing to sign the peace treaty to end the war between the Rock Village and the Hidden Leaf Village. The Cloud Village didn't even attempt to take a member of the Hyuga clan until after Minato had died. This is the very same Cloud Village that is really notorious for being aggressive and making aggressive moves, which says a lot that even despite all of this, despite the fact that they have 2 Jinchuriki of their village, they were not willing to make a move against Konoha that bold until after Minato had died. They didn't want any of the smoke with Minato. Those boys had asthma. Finally, by placing Kakashi in the Anbu, Minato strengthened the Anbu division with a generational talent, and at the same time, he was beginning to put himself in position to ultimately handle Danzo, who he did know was going to be a threat, with the logic being that Minato and Kakashi's relationship would eventually be able to overcome Danzo's scheming and all his plotting and planning, and Minato would now have a man on the inside who he could trust. So that's it for this one, guys. So obviously I'll be doing a video on who I think the most overrated Hokage is. Even though I have an idea of who I'm going to choose, I'm down to 2 Hokages. I would really love to see you guys' thoughts on who you think the most overrated Hokage is. And as always, guys, if you like anything I had to say, don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Have an awesome day, guys.